Hello again, Dezz Asante here from the TechMuze Academy. Welcome back to another episode of the TechMuze podcast. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, one of my main goals this year, which started in 2016, is to involve a lot of other people, a lot of other minds into the show, because I don't want it to be the Dezz show all the time, because I only have a limited amount of ideas to share with you all. So today is no different. Today we have D. Grant Smith. He is a podcaster, he is a radio personality, a speaker, and the growth farmer himself. How you doing, brother?
Doing very well, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. So we've been interacting a little bit online via Facebook. I think we're members of some groups that are discussing some of the cool subjects surrounding artist marketing and how to get yourself out there. And in fact, I believe you participated in the Music Launch Hub, did you not, as a speaker?
Yes, I got to be part of the masterclass stuff with Steve Palferman. That was really awesome. And in the hub now, and also in the elite group for folks that are kind of taking their game to another level.
Right, very cool. So before we get too far into it, for those who might not be familiar with you, give us a little bit of a backstory. Who are you? What do you do? And why might your thoughts be relevant?
I guess this is kind of the introductory elevator pitch kind of thing.
You got it.
My specialty in every area of business that I've worked in, whether it's in music or in media or anything, has been relationship building and relationship cultivation. And so I spend most of my time working with people, whether they are entrepreneurs and small businesses as entrepreneurs, or musicians, or music industry people, or anybody that is trying to do something with their ideas and turn it into something that draws audience. I'm all about helping people build really awesome relationships, and not just build the relationship from how to get somebody to respond to an email that you send, but how to actually cultivate those relationships so that they benefit you over time. And that is what I call growth farming. It's a matter of planting seeds and then cultivating those seeds and feeding it and watering it and building reciprocal connections so that it produces fruit for you and you produce fruit for it over and over and over again over a period of time. And so that's the audience growth farmer part. When I'm not doing that, I make a syndicated radio show called The Appetizer, and then I also host a podcast called The DIY Artist Route. And I think that's one of the ways you and I've talked in the past about doing some of the folks that I've talked with on there, and work with the group of the Music Launch Hub. And I've got a blog and I do some motivational speaking, and that's me in a nutshell.
So you keep yourself busy, in other words.
Yeah.
Incidentally, if people who are listening, if you don't already subscribe to the DIY Artist Route podcast, I recommend it. I've recently subscribed and sort of binged a few episodes in a row, and I'm really enjoying it. And who knows, maybe I'll get to come and talk to your audience someday.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a backlog. I honestly have not been as able to produce like solid shows. I do it about twice a month, so that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, man, in the future, I'd love to have the conversation with you.
Very cool. And again, one of the things I'm excited to chat with you about is to dig deeper into this growth farming. One of our first interactions online, I believe I was responding to somebody else's comments in one of these groups, and I mentioned fan farming, the fan farming concept. And I believe your response was, you had me at farming.
Yeah.
Because I also have a similar analogy and a similar approach from the sounds of it, and we'll find out more as we dig a little deeper to artist marketing, which in my opinion is all about the cultivation of the audience. And there's a number of people out there who I admire that are really, really good at this. One who I always bring up over and over again is Amanda Palmer. Are you familiar with Amanda Palmer?
Oh, her book, The Art of Asking, changed my life in 2015.
Totally.
Yeah, that was a game changer for me.
Yeah, and she is, I don't know how closely you follow her online, but she is, in my opinion, from a musician standpoint, one of the best, if not the best, that I've ever seen at this culture development, at this, what was it that Peter Hollins called it? He called it community management, which is a little bit of a drier term, but it applies nonetheless. And she is so good at blurring the line between fan and friend and possibly even family, and has one of the most loyal fan bases that I've seen. Yeah, and she's got a lot of practice doing it. I mean, her book is kind of a roadmap for what that looks like in a very practical sense. For me, like reading The Art of Asking, I was, and I think I had read about it several times,
And then I saw somebody say, like, if you are really serious about building relationships with your audience and actually growing something that is going to be sustainable, and you haven't read this book, every second is like wasted life. And so I don't want to say I'm an avid reader because I don't read as much as other people do, but I read a lot, and I don't really buy books from the bookstore and pay full price very often. I'm usually like, if I'm at a discount store, I'm like, oh, that one's just $2. Okay, I'll buy it now.
Yeah.
But I rush to my bookstore, and I paid full price for it, and I never looked back. And now since then, I've bought that same book about 5 times, and I give it away because it was like, to me, that's another indication of this is something that's really powerful. I'm going to buy extra copies and give them to people that I feel can really use, the story that's in that. But her talking about, like, not, I think she was maybe even not paying for an apartment for a period of time. She was just couch surfing, I think is the term that she uses. But, when she would say, like, okay, I'm going to play this show that I just booked. Whose house can I stay at tonight? Yeah. And I think she said the first time she didn't think that was actually going to work, and like 2 people offered. And so then that, kind of like, and everything we do as creative entrepreneurs, you don't know whether or not something works until you test it. Yeah. If the first time you test it, it works, then it's kind of like, okay, well, then I can do this again without fear that it's going to not work. And if it doesn't work the next time I try it, then maybe I just need to change my approach or try it again at a different time. And so, and another cool thing about Amanda, she kept testing over and over and over again, and then it just became what she did. Yes. And because of that, like, people got used to, like, she's going to come stay at our house, and she's kind of a part of our family. And I think that's where like you were talking about, blurring the lines between fan and friend and family, and that's part of that process. And it isn't something that happens instantaneously, and it isn't necessarily something that you can send a couple messages out and now you have this connection that you can utilize in whatever way. Like, it is a cultured relationship.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to dig into this a little bit more. So in a nutshell, what would you describe as the growth farming concept? Like, not just the concept itself, but how it's applied to business. I mean, a lot of times people, especially musicians, but entrepreneurs in general, we get hung up on the concept of making sales, because a business without sales is not much of a business, right? So that has to happen at some point. But it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your focus is really not on the making of sales and the income of revenue into the business, albeit I imagine that it's something that takes place while following your approach. Is that correct? Would you rephrase that, or tell us a bit about that?
To me, and this is kind of something that I have a lot of conversations with my friends that are musicians that are trying to figure out the monetization aspect of their work. I had a conversation with a good friend yesterday about this subject, and I think it's kind of a tricky thing if you're a right brain person, and I might even be getting whether it's right or left, it's primarily creative versus primarily practical. But if you're predominantly strengthened in the side that is really creative and really artistic, and the practical businessy side is not only a mystery, but it's kind of scary. And you're spending your time trying to figure out how to keep making your art better so that other people will eventually buy it. And what is it that you have to do? Part of it is putting the price tag on something and working the relationship so that like Amanda did, like when you get to the time when you're going to make the ask, you're not selling something in that kind of, and I felt this way too. I've avoided, even in growing my business, I've avoided the sales aspect of things because I didn't want to be perceived as this thing that I did that I didn't like. Right. And that was the salesman that's always just trying to make the sale and just always trying to smooze and not really have the best interest of the person at heart. I'm just trying to make the sale. And we've all experienced that so many times that it turns us off. Yeah. That when we get to where it's our work and it's like, oh, I don't want them to see me as that thing because that's not who I am. But how do I do this thing without being viewed as that person? And that's a tough place to be. So to get from there into the method that I use, I cultivate relationships. I have a lot of dialogue, and I get to a place where when I see that like what I can do is a benefit to you, then we have the money conversation. And you can keep reading my content, you can keep listening to my stuff, but what the best way I can serve you is to work one-on-one alongside with you. And if that's a business, That's me working one-on-one alongside with the business and the business owner, and helping the business owner and their team build stronger relationships with each other so that they can build strong relationships with their customer base. The whole aspect of growth farming is this simple ideology that what we plant and cultivate within ourselves individually produces fruit. And that fruit is what other people experience and what they know us for. And the better that fruit is, the more desire they have to want to be a part of that. And so as an individual musician, the things that you focus your attention on and you are consciously planting in your heart and in your mind. Tony Robbins talks about the correlation between our minds and our hearts, and how we need to be focused on things that we want versus things that we don't want. But, and I mentioned his name because, I can say him and like, okay, I understand that guy. If he's doing this thing, then that kind of makes a little bit more sense.
Right.
But, there are other growth coaches and people that do this kind of thing. Seth Godin talks a lot about being remarkable and making sure that what you're doing is trying to be somebody that is making a difference in the world and being uniquely you and telling your unique story versus trying to tell somebody else's story because it works.
Yeah, the purple cow.
Yeah, the purple cow. And so there's a couple of different like iterations of this methodology, but it's something that I've found to be true in my own personal walk, in my own personal life. In my business relationships, I've worked with companies that I don't have any experience or expertise in the industry that I'm helping them work in, but I know I'm really good at building relationships, and so that's what I do and come in and help them with.
Right. And
it's because I work those relationships we finally got to a place where like, how can I have what you do and make it a part of what I do, and then we have that conversation. So there is a sales aspect to it, but I'm trying to see from the front end, how can I be a benefit to these people? And in doing so, I'm communicating a couple of things. One, I'm communicating that I care about them, which is a very big deal. Two, I'm showing that I'm a personable person that is trustworthy and dedicated to fulfilling a specific need versus just trying to sell this product so I can make some money. And third, the value exchange is a very big deal. By communicating that value and by being repetitive in that, I'm communicating that I'm a communicative individual.
Right.
And I think a lot of us as artists and creatives, people are used to artists being a little flaky, to be honest. They're used to us, showing up only when we have to, and sometimes being late. We've got a gig. The sound check is at 3:30. The gig is actually at 4:30. You're supposed to be there at 3:30, and the guy, you don't show up till 4 because it's a sound check. Who cares?
Right.
But the people that are running that venue care, and they're taking their stuff really seriously, and it's a reflection on you, whether you realize it or not. So these little, and that affects the relationship that you end up having with the venue. And this is just a loose example, but like these little things that we do are reflections and are fruits of the way that we are, and those help to either contribute to the growth of our relationships and the connections that we have, which lead to other opportunities, or they can possibly hinder us. So that's in a nutshell both the methodology and where the sales aspect comes into play.
Well, you dropped a bunch of value bombs in there, things I want to touch on a little bit. One that springs to mind is you alluded to the fact that a large part of your process with this philosophy of growth farming and relationship development has to do with the focus on oneself. When you reference Tony Robbins, it's cultivating oneself so that they become more valuable and more attractive to the prospective audience, whoever that may be, depending on the circumstances. And I find that that's a perspective that many people overlook. It's something that's come up a lot recently, actually, in conversation on various subjects in my life. The idea of the expansion of self-awareness, which leads to the recognition of the things in my own thought patterns, which represent themselves in my behavioral patterns, that have a direct effect on how the world then responds back to me. It's this as within, so without philosophy. And when I really started to get my mind around that concept, it's inspiring and gives a sense of control over one's world, because I can affect my own thoughts. I can notice them. I can, alter the ones I feel are not beneficial to me. I can inject a few extra ones from time to time that I think might help me. And then, of course, I can walk through the world and look at the results that it has. And I think that from a philosophical perspective is pretty friggin' cool.
Yeah.
Right? And again, like I say, I think it's overlooked, and a lot of people, they're constantly looking outwards. And this is where that whole tendency to seem salesy may come into place. And the other thing that I was thinking of as I was listening to you speak is the concept, and I don't remember who said it first, not that it really matters, but with great marketing, sales is not necessary. And the marketing aspect is, in my opinion, this growth farming concept that you're talking about. It's the relationship building. It's the building of a culture, or perhaps even a cult, surrounding your art and what you do, so that you have an audience of people who have raised their hands and said, yes, I'm interested. You've caught my eye. Tell me more. And then from there, you begin to develop a rapport and what I like to do, I teach a course called the Artist Promotion Blueprint. And that course is based on these concepts with a heavy focus on automation so that you can do it at scale, even as a solopreneur, the one-man band kind of thing, which a lot of us are. How do if I have 10 people who are fans of mine, I can handwrite them a letter and send it in the mail. If I have 10,000 people, that channel of communication becomes impractical. And how, what are the tools that are available today that allow me to still build genuine relationships with people, but in a way that can scale, right? And like I say, with good marketing, with good relationship building, then a sale is simply just making something known, making something available. I focus most of my attention on building relationships, and then every now and again I just let people know, by the way, this is available over here if you think it might be of value to you. And not only that, but we find that we when we sell our music specifically, we use a pay what you want model. So we put in a suggested price of $10 for a 10-song record, and you can erase that, put 0 and grab the tunes for free, or you can keep it at 10, you can increase it, you can add a tip on top. So it really gives the power to the fan to decide what they feel the value is. And oftentimes, don't get me wrong, we've given a lot of tunes away for free, but oftentimes people buy the album for $10 and tip an extra $10 on top. And this happens fairly commonly, and it's because of the focus on the relationship building, which I think is the thing that a lot of people miss, and which is why I was excited to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that, man, because that's I talk a lot about being uncommon. That's one of my little, pinnacle catchphrase, I guess, things. And there are a lot of artists that spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to have the relationships with people that lead to the results that you have. And they dream about that. It's a fantasy, and you're living that fantasy. So that's a hallmark of serious success. Even to just do that once, that's a hallmark of serious success. So congratulations to you on that, man.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting approach, and like I say, all things are in development. As technologies change and as the ways in which we relate to one another changes, the channels of communication, et cetera, there'll be lots of modification. In fact, I'm in the process of putting together APB 2.0 right now for some very similar reasons. Right, a lot has changed very quickly, but the core concept remains the same. If I really respect you and I really feel that you add value to my life, it's really, really easy for me to say yes when you have something to offer. There's this reciprocation effect. I don't know if you're familiar with Robert Cialdini.
Not the name, no.
Okay, well, he wrote a book called Influence after a period of study, and I highly recommend it. If you haven't read it, put that one on your list.
Yeah, message it to me after we're done.
I will.
That way
Yeah, and one of them, I won't remember all of them, but there were 6 points that he discovered through his experimentation were the key influence factors to get somebody to do what it is you want them to do. And one of them was the concept of reciprocity. And that is, of course, for the people listening, that's the idea that I'm giving. And because I've provided you with so much value, when I have a small ask, it's so much easier for you to feel like saying yes, because you want want to reciprocate the value that I've provided. Gary Vaynerchuk wrote a book about it called Jab, 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 Right Hook. I don't know if you've read that one.
I've read. I'm reading that one. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. So I mean, Gary's a character, but I really enjoy his philosophies, his concepts. I mean, he in his words, he says he's in the what is it? He day trades attention is how he puts it, right?
Yeah.
And he's very, very good at it.
And intensity. He day trades intensity too.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, he's definitely a polarizing character, and I think that that's important too. And it reminds me of the concept of leading with your authentic self. Like, how do you feel about that? Because you get, especially with artists, you get this whole image thing, right? That a lot of artists are into. It's like, oh, I do this genre of music, so I should have the image of this. If I do gangster rap, I better look like a thug. If I do metal, I better have a beard. Like, right? Yeah. This kind of thing versus just the authentic presentation of yourself. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
I have kind of some mixed feelings on that. I'm not really sure if I have one set of beliefs.
Okay.
And you mentioned if you're doing hip hop or in hip hop in a style, you've got to look like a thug, and there are guys that are very talented at that, and they don't go down that road. There are metal guys that just look like what I would consider to be just emo dudes.
Right.
There are singer-songwriter guys that look like metalheads because they've got the super big beard and the long hair and like zillions of tattoos, but then you listen to them play and they're like just very kind of meek sounding, down to earth, very, fluid storytelling. And it's like, you have just blown the doors off of my ideology on who you thought you were. So for me, I mean, the image I think is important if that's something that you feel is necessary to get on the map with people that you wouldn't otherwise know how to, because you feel like you're in this new place, and unless you follow somebody else's model, and that's what the game plan is. We're going to follow this model, we're going to do this thing, so that after we built up some traction, then we can start showing ourselves to be who we really are. That to me, that's a methodology. It's a tactic. Right. Does that mean that's the only tactic and the only methodology that works? No, but it is there, and it has worked for some people, so it could be something that you do. Another thing you could do is you could be Mark Zuckerberg and say, I'm going to show up to board meetings wearing a T-shirt and shorts and flip-flops.
Yeah.
And if they don't like it, I don't care, because I'm just here to do this thing.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that guy's changed a whole lot. I mean, he and what he's created have changed all of our lives in significant ways. But, I mean, he's changed himself, even his leadership style and the way that he communicates with people. He's adapted and gotten better. But even in his early days, say what you will about his personality and his flaws, but there's a guy with an incredible amount of confidence. And, we say the same thing about Steve Jobs. There's a guy with an incredible amount of confidence. He's going to go into a room and he's going to tell everybody why he's right.
Yes.
And there's something to be said about that. I like Steve Jobs' work. Obviously, I'm an iPhone user and I only use Apple products. But I know that from what I've read, he would be if he were still alive, he would be a terrible person for me to work for, because my personality type is so different. The way I respond to people is so different.
Yeah.
But again, these are models. These are concepts. So in terms of your authentic self versus this version of what you could be so that you appeal to certain people, I think it just comes down to what is it that you really want to do.
Yeah, fair enough.
Who is it that you really want to be? Are you trying to reach such critical mass so quickly that you need to you need to dress up in somebody else's clothes and put their face on and do their thing and go through that mimicky thing until you figure out who it is that you are, so that you can present that to other people and hope that they will adapt the transition, and that you won't become this other thing that you've been trying to be so that you can gain attention? If that's the thing you're going to do, be aware of that possibility. Or are you going to be yourself, and you're going to put yourself out there and say, this is me, I'm remarkable, I'm uncommon, I'm not like these other people, I'm similar to this guy, and I'm similar to this girl, and I have kind of this sound, but I'm doing my own thing, and if you like these three people, I'm sure you'll like something that I have. Here's one thing that you can start with.
Right.
Let's have I would just like to hear what you think about that.
Yeah.
Can we talk about this? If you're at the early stages of your career and trying to figure out how to move forward, to me, that's a methodology that allows you to be yourself and shows that you are a unique person that brings something different to the table, and you are specific about what that is, and you're not content with following a bandwagon.
It also sounds less tiring than trying to, put the mask on every time you go out, and it sounds a lot easier to do. It's almost like when I was a kid and I would tell that one lie, and then I got to remember, and then it turns into another lie, and then before you know it, it's a whole cascade of this fictitious thing that I have to keep up in the air, or else it all falls apart. I feel that would be exhausting, personally.
Yeah. So, but I want to play devil's advocate, if you'll allow me to, Dezz.
Sure.
The other side of this coin is you've been doing that for a little while, and you can't figure out how to make it work, because people experience that stuff too. And I'll be honest with you, like. With my radio show, I did that for about 5 years, and I didn't think that anybody was really listening. And I was working for a public radio station, and I had gone from being just kind of a student part-time worker to working. I was not supposed to be working full-time, but I was on a part-time basis. But I was doing like 50 hours a week and still trying to cultivate my radio show, and I didn't know who was listening. This was kind of pre-social media, and I didn't have the money to be able to spend in the website to figure out the metrics and all that kind of stuff. So I was just going based on what people at the station were telling me. And my boss at the time was like, your show is too crazy. I don't like this music. I'm only playing it because we need somebody to fill this hole. And so, going back to the things that we put inside ourselves, the culture that we're around kind of puts stuff in us too.
Yes.
So the culture that we're in is kind of like, it's kind of like a rainforest. If you've got good rainfall and good sunshine and you're surrounded by healthy plants, you're going to probably be a pretty healthy plant. But if you're in an arid place and it's windy all the time and it doesn't hardly ever rain and there's not a whole lot of other crops around you and everything's pretty thorny, you're probably going to not feel all that good about life most of the time.
Yes.
And you might develop some thorns yourself just to survive. So, I mean, metaphors are one of my gifts, and I maybe I use them too big, but
not for me, as far as I'm concerned. Carry on.
But this other side of the coin, where you've tried to be your authentic self, and maybe you haven't been received the way that you wanted to, and you keep putting yourself out there, and you don't know how to make that change and make that work. And what I've found is that when people and when artists are going through this, what they haven't figured out is who they really are. They're being their authentic self, but they don't know what that means. And they don't know, they haven't gone through a process of figuring out their artistic identity. And being able to, and I mean, one of the reasons why saying like this other person's model is a good thing to look at is because all of us as human beings need to have some sort of frame to understand what it is that we don't know yet. And when we're talking about a new artist and new music, that's why when you see like Reverb Nation's been doing this for forever, and SoundCloud has too, and there's other places, they'll say sounds like, and you've got a list of other people. And to me, it seems intriguing when people will list different artists that play in different genres as who they sound like. Because that tells me that there's something about these people that they think that there's a connection to, and now I'm intrigued. Now I'll go listen.
Right.
But I saw this band that said, inspired by, influenced by U2, sounds like U2, and I clicked their song to listen to it, and they were U2 with a different guy singing. It was the exact same sound, and there was nothing interesting about that because we already have U2.
Right.
Already made a zillion albums, and they've already rocked the world a couple thousand times.
Yeah.
So, but all of this to say that your artistic identity is more than you just being your authentic self. It's about you going through a process of exploration. And that's one of the things that I do when I work one-on-one with artists in coaching is getting into their artistic identity so that we can figure out who their fan base is. Because maybe the reason why things aren't connecting is you're trying to get in front of the wrong people.
I was going to say that very same point there as I was listening to you speak, that oftentimes is a targeting issue, which, as you're describing, comes about because of a lack of this self-awareness that we've been describing, this self-exploration as an artist. It reminds me also of a story. My partner Carol and I, we play together as an acoustic duo, right? We write and record, but we also do a lot of cover gigs, and because they pay the bills, right? And one of the things on our website, originally, I had described us as a mix between Dave Matthews, Florence and the Machine, and Tommy Emmanuel. I don't know if you know him, the Australian guitar player. He's a monster, right? That's the kind of guitar I like to play. I like to try to play. Anyway, I've got some work to do. But I realized in retrospect, I've gotten rid of that description, and I realized in retrospect that that isn't what we sound like. That's what inspires us. But we don't actually sound like that. And it wasn't until we started getting feedback from people on our email list and people who follow us on social media as to what they believe we sound like that I realized how off the mark that was. And if I was trying to present myself, us, our music, to that target market, then we might not at all ever be well received because we don't actually sound like that. But that is what inspires us. That is definitely something that comes out some way, in some tiny ways in our creative process. But that's certainly not what we sound like when you just hit play and sit back. You know?
Yeah.
So not only some self-exploration was necessary there, but also just pinging off of our audience and getting the feedback from the people who are perceiving us as to how we are being perceived, and then rolling that into our sort of description of ourselves, which would then inform our decision making when it comes to targeting and what we're trying to do as far as marketing and promotion is concerned.
So when you're talking about pinging your audience, I'm curious, are you doing that in a face-to-face interaction, like after your show? Are you having conversations with people and that's how it happens? Or did you do surveys, or did you do like questions online? What was your process of figuring that out?
Kind of all of the above, really. We do like to make a habit of in between sets, going out and talking to people, especially those people who looked most engaged with the music, walk over, cheers a beer and sit down for a few minutes and see who they are, get to know them. Obviously collect an email address if you can do so as well, so you can continue the relationship. Or the other thing I like to do is just, here's my phone, find yourself on Facebook and I'll add you, right? And that way, a relationship can begin from there. But also just putting messages out on Facebook, just asking questions here and there. We haven't done any sort of formal survey as of yet, but that might be something we insert into our autoresponder sequence in our email campaign at a certain point of, after, opening the kimono a little bit and letting people get to know us and giving them a lot of value, a lot of music, a lot of this is who we are. And then maybe at some point down the sequence, getting the feedback, now that you've spent some time with us, who do we sound like? What do we, So it's a good way to sort of gain some actual data as to what your actual market thinks about you. And then you can, of course, expand upon that, especially if you get into the world of paid advertising. There's all kinds of stuff. I don't know if you've played around with the Facebook ad platform, but I'm in the process of putting a course together on Facebook marketing for musicians and artists, because it's a powerful platform. You can do some amazing things on Facebook if you have a little budget. I'm not talking, daddy warbucks here. If you've got $100 to play with, you can do some pretty cool things on the Facebook ad platform in terms of growth, reaching the people who might most likely resonate with you. And of course, figuring out who the heck those people might be is this process that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's really awesome.
It's effective. It's seemingly effective anyway. And I mean, it all boils down to the same thing we've been discussing since the beginning of the conversation, which is just, building authentic relationships with people as many times as you can at every opportunity that you can, and taking them as deeply as you can. And that, in my opinion, apart from creating great art, right? Apart from honing your craft and making the next project even better than the previous one, that's important too. But hopefully that's the part that as artists and musicians, that's what we already do just because we can't help ourselves, right? And then this whole, okay, now I've got art to share with the world, where you go from that point is, of course, what I really enjoy talking about and strategizing and experimenting with and whatnot. And once you've gotten a little bit of an audience together and you've got a bit of momentum and you started to get feedback from that audience with with $100 or so and a Facebook ad strategy, you can really just skyrocket that into a much larger audience. Have you played around with this yet at all in your experience or in your consulting?
Yeah, and with some of the businesses I've worked with too, and that's been part of the figuring out who's the best market for the product or service that you have. I mean, if you're in an industry, that's fairly explanatory in terms of what the market is, but how do you go after all of the people in the market that you want to reach? Not all the people that are in the market, which is a different story. And I think that's another thing that throws some people off, like, because Facebook's a great example. You can see the amount of people that are in this, like, for the singer-songwriter market. let's say that it's alternative rock, and then that number shrinks down just a little bit. There's still like 200 million people in that are on Facebook that are in that, and then you start breaking it down by these other categories, but you still see these massive numbers of people. And yes, now your number is smaller, and so it can seem like you're a little bit more focused than you were when you started off with just music.
Yes.
But you're still not focused enough. There's some other things to figure out to get in. I forget who it was that said this. It might have been Seth Godin. It might have been one of the other. It might have been Derek Halpern or somebody else in the marketing space that said, start with the smallest number of people you can, and then niche down to the smallest group of people you can, so you can get really, really specific about that.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've nailed that, then you grow up instead of trying to start at the top and then somehow along the way of going down, you figure out who your audience is.
Yeah.
It's a different process to go through. It's kind of like digging for gold to get gold so that you can come back up and develop everything else that's coming up, from it.
Yeah.
And it does take more introspection, and it is a little bit longer, but it's far more beneficial because from the outset, when you start that process, you have a much higher likelihood of success. Your success rate goes through the roof versus I think I've got this and I've invested this money, but I'm not really seeing anything. And so I guess Facebook's not working for me, which a lot of people do.
Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting point there in the whole, the concept of educating oneself. I mean, I know a lot of people that, just like you mentioned, they try a particular tactic out, they don't get a result, and they assume that it's that platform or that tool or whatever that doesn't work. If I had done the same, I would be having a whole lot less success with my advertising campaigns that I run now. I tried lots of different ad strategies in the beginning and spent a whole bunch of money and didn't get a whole lot of return on my investment. And so I dove into educating myself and figuring out, because I know other people are doing it. So, what's the difference, right? And being able to seek out the information or the people, the mentors, the people that you can brain pick that are going to help you figure out, okay, why didn't this work? If indeed you deem it something worth repeating, something like we've been talking about, Facebook advertising, to me, it seemed like, okay, I need to educate myself because I know that people are spending thousands of dollars a day. And those are the small time, organizations, and they're doing it for a reason. They're not just throwing $1,000 a day on the fire. They're getting a return on that investment,
Mm-hmm.
or else they wouldn't be doing it. And so there was a code that needed to be cracked. And so I dove into, a good year of study on the Facebook ad platform, and I'm really excited to get this new course out that's going to be coming out hopefully in the very near future, because I think it's a powerful way for musicians to do exactly what we've been describing, to figure out who their ideal audience is, to figure out exactly how to target them, and then to put something of value in front of them on purpose that's going to cause them to stop for a second, interrupt their pattern, right? And then become intrigued in some fashion. And like you mentioned, the narrower you can niche yourself down, the easier it is for you to really catch somebody's attention, Like that's why with some artists, it's a little easier because it's genre specific. I believe, if I did, ukulele, punk rock, polka, right, then it's that there's the niche right there. I don't have to look too much further. But if you have a broad style from one song to another, and it's a little harder to nail down, then you've got to go much deeper into this introspection and into this pinging of whatever audience that you do have, until you start to hone in on exactly what it is that people are enjoying the most about what you put out into the world. And then you can go out and find those people, drop $100 into it, and expand your audience exponentially. And now you've gone from a cold audience of people who've never heard of you before to a warm audience of people who you've intrigued at some point or another. And hopefully you can take that warm audience and, through relationship development and nurturing, turn them from fans into super fans.
Yeah.
Also known as customers, by the way, or supporters.
Yeah. Or consistent customers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. When or if you ever do ukulele, punk rock, polka, I will become your first super fan.
Nice.
That sounds just awesome.
Well, I'll mention it to Carol because the ukulele is her primary instrument, and punk rock polka, I think she's totally capable of it. So
that would be awesome. Having not heard any of those songs, I'm a punk rocker at heart, and I like the ukulele, so I'm intrigued. Just you
There
had
you go.
you had me at hello.
Well, I'll keep you in the loop. I'll get you on our email list then. How's that?
Awesome.
Awesome. So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to be respectful of your time too. I won't keep you too long, but I just wanted to shift gears a little bit into sort of some practicalities, perhaps before we get to the end of the conversation. Can you give us some, 2 or 3 sort of really practical, pragmatic steps, things that people can do to sort of start this process of relationship building and audience nurturing, culture development? Anything that comes to mind that's real practical?
Yeah, real practical. One thing that's been very important for me in my personal growth, and I encourage every person that I work with to do this. It is to take a little bit of time every day, preferably at the start of the day, before you really get into work mode, so that you can get your mindset squared away. And mindset is a very big deal. For the days that I have not started my day off getting my mind and my heart in alignment with a specific focus and motion are the days when I'm a boxing fan. So those are the days that when the haymakers come, I don't find myself as ready for them.
Right.
And I can get knocked on my butt pretty fast. I'm a little dude. I can get knocked on my butt pretty fast. But the haymakers that come because I have not decided that this is who I am and this is what I do and this is what I produce and this is what I'm known for, and I have reminded my heart and my mind of that. It is harder to then feel like I can take steps forward just to get through the rest of the day on a very practical term. And then you get to the end of the day and it's like, what did I do? I spent all my time focused on this thing that happened to me that I don't really understand. And I don't really know what, I guess I'll figure out how to make this happen, but and so that can make you step backward, or if failing to do it and getting your mind and your heart in the right place can keep you from going down the path that you need to be on.
Right.
And it might cause you to take distractions where you get off the main path and you end up chasing all these rabbit trails.
Yeah.
And then you end up like, what did I end up doing today? I wanted to do this thing, and I spent all of my time responding to or reading Facebook feeds about eucalyptus, whatever, or what, little things like that. And so from a practical standpoint, here, I'll just tell you exactly what I do. I try to go for a walk in the morning, because going for a walk gets me out of my house. I'm exercising in a sense because it's movement. And as a musician and as a person in the digital space, we spend a lot of time behind computers, looking at screens and having interactions that way. I think it's healthy for us as human beings and healthy for us as people to get up and move around. Exercise is an important thing. It's not just something that they told us in school we need to do. It is something that's important.
Yeah.
But I go for a walk, and while I'm on the walk, I spend a lot of time reflecting on what I've experienced over the past day and a half or two, week, and I'm asking myself questions about why I did certain things, and this is all my internal stuff. But I get to a point of the walk where I say, okay, I'm going to do my mantra. And my mantra is this: I'm walking around outside of my neighborhood. There's a chance that my neighbors think that I'm crazy, but I don't really care. I put my hand on my heart and I say, what is inside of me is love and joy and peace and wealth and prosperity and passion. And those are 6 things. And those are six things that I want to be inside of me. Those are 6 fruits that I want to produce. Those are 6 seeds I want to plant, and I plant them in me every day. And I usually, I'm a numbers person. I like 7. It's my favorite number. It's complete. And 8 is a number of newness. So I will usually either add 1 or 2 other things as they come to mind. Some days it's strength. Some days it's hope. Some days it's prosperity. Or I already said prosperity. Some day, whatever it is.
Sure.
So this is what is inside of me. I say that out loud. And then my next phrase is, what I produce is love and joy and peace and wealth and prosperity and passion. And what I am known for is love and joy and peace and wealth and prosperity and passion. And what people are drawn to me for is love and joy and peace and wealth and prosperity and passion. And there's this whole thing about affirmations. And affirmations are, there's people in every walk of life and every continent and every religious background that believe in the power of positive affirmations and professing these things. What we say with our mouth comes out of our heart, and it becomes true for what we think. Sure. And so part of the exercise is being physical about doing it, saying it so that it can come into being, and reminding both of these things and getting them in harmony with each other.
I love
and
this.
It's a declaration, it's an affirmation. This is what I want my life to be about. And for me, it's more about these somewhat intangible things, like, wealth and prosperity are things that I want to be inside of me, and those are things I want to produce. Have I put a dollar sign on that? No, because I don't really know what wealth and prosperity looks like. I'm thinking huge in my mind, but I don't want to limit what that could possibly be.
Of course.
I want to be known as somebody that is full of unending, powerful love that changes the world. And that's what I plant that in some days, like, I don't think I can do more than one thing. And so I make sure that that's the only thing that I'm reaffirming in myself. Mm-hmm. And some days that's the only thing that I think that I need, because I just feel so drained and I feel so totally out, and I feel like I can't go on. But if I can get this inside of me, then I've got hope. And that's, from a practical standpoint, you mentioned a minute ago about doing, the personal reflection stuff, and realizing that, in our minds, that's the only thing we can control.
Right.
And who we are and what we do. Those are the only things that we have the power to really be influential in a change. We can try to do things that will help other people behave in certain ways and do stuff, but we even if we try to control them, even if we try to manipulate them, there's no guarantee that any of that stuff's going to work out. And it's probably control and manipulation. I'm very anti. So that is a very dangerous way to go about doing it. All I can control and help and cultivate and nurture and make better is me.
Yeah, and it's a lot more powerful than I think many people realize. This counterintuitive concept of, in order to affect what's outside of me, I focus on what's inside of me. And I really like your approach to your sort of morning power routine there, in particular with the focus on the beginning of the mantra, planting the seeds within yourself. These are the things I want within me. And then as the mantra progresses, these are the things I want to produce in the world. These are the things I want to generate in other people as well. And it's sort of the inhale and then the exhale. Yeah. Right?
So what that's done for me is it's helped to change my focus about how I see other people. And I'll just be very candid with you, man. Like, being in the music curation space, 99.9% of the messages that get sent to me are, "Hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me." Yeah. And honestly, that's a tough thing to, where you get contacted by tons of people you don't know every day, and all they want is for you to hook them up by taking their thing and putting it on your deal. But they don't seem to really care much about who you are. They just want they want the benefits of what you can do, but they don't give a shit about who you are. Pardon my language.
It's all exhale, no inhale.
Yeah, and so there are people that do what I do, that sometimes they close their door off from accepting things from other people, even submissions and stuff, even though they play any music and they welcome that stuff. Because when you're constantly being asked, and somebody's constantly saying, "Scratch my back, I don't care about you, scratch my back, scratch my back, scratch my back," that can affect the way that you see other people. And so what I wanted to do was, I didn't want my perspective to be jaded. And I could feel that there were times where it was, and I didn't want that, because I want to be known for love and I want to give that, but I've got to have the right mindset so that I can approach somebody the right way and give them the thing that they need. Absolutely. And I can have the conversations that they need to have, where I can say at some point, I can get to a place where I can take them on a little bit of a journey and get them to a place to say, like, "Hey, here's something that will actually help you benefit your what you're trying to do, get you the end result you want. You think you have to start here. Actually, you need to get to that place a little bit later on down the road." But I have to have the right perspective for that. So what I've found is that by doing this, I see people in a more loving way. I'm not judging somebody by the way that they interact with me, even if I wish that they were doing something differently. It gives me a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy. And that is one of those unique things that, as we grow as human beings and we want to be better people, having compassion and empathy is something that really sets us apart if we choose for it to. And it makes people want to be around us more, because we're not this rigid person that's difficult to be around and is only out for ourselves. or somebody that wants to help other people win and be a part of the process and have collaboration and do things with, and that it's an enjoyable experience.
And then you trigger the like attracts like sort of law of the universe, as it were.
Yeah.
And so in what you're describing right now, you're basically pointing out exactly how one literally influences their reality by influencing their internal reality. You know, if you, as you say, you know, your perspective was getting jaded, so you develop this practice to help avoid that, to stay in alignment with yourself, with your true desires and goals in life, which once in alignment allows you the stability and confidence to then approach anybody else without fear of being dragged into wherever they are at the time. You're focused, you're aligned, you can perceive them from a state of love and appreciation and the desire to help, you know, regardless of whether they're a troll on Facebook or, you know, or somebody, you know, who's just a beautiful human being that you need to be around. And you'll find that, or at least I have found that, perhaps you can corroborate this, that all of a sudden the people that are being drawn towards me and that I'm being drawn towards, the flavor of them, the nature of them are changing. And my world then becomes, you know, just full of this thing that I have caused myself to become into alignment with. Yeah. You know? Yeah. I mean, this conversation got a little more spiritual than I anticipated, but I really enjoy this. I really enjoyed this. And I think, in my opinion, I posted on Facebook a couple of weeks ago that a little epiphany that I had, that business in general is a spiritual practice and in my opinion should be approached as such.
I did see that, and I was like, yeah, this guy's right on.
Yeah. And it doesn't get talked about a great deal. It's interestingly enough, though, I'm a podcast junkie. I listen to them constantly, and a lot of them are on the subject of business and marketing. And interestingly enough, in the last maybe 2 months or so, I'm starting to hear bits of this kind of concept being peppered in. It seems to be erupting in people's minds more and more, the awareness of the internal, external relationship of things and the interaction with people and how it affects everything, and how a transaction, in my opinion, a sale, quote unquote, should be regarded as taking someone from one state and transitioning them to a better state. You know, that is the process of selling for me. Right?
Well, to me, that's the process of art too.
Absolutely.
Taking what, and you know, this time of human existence is a great example of this. And I kind of, one of the questions I ask artists and creatives of any type, what are you doing to transform the world? There's enough that's going on to divide us. What are you doing to transform and change the game? And because people are desperately searching for that. I started a thing on my personal Facebook page, and I'm doing it for the entire month of February, where every day I go on and I'm just giving a little bit of an encouraging word, because I know that there are people that want that. They just don't know where to look. And in the process, I want people to see me as somebody that's loving, and I want them to trust me in that loving process. And if there's a chance for me to give something more and have a conversation that benefits them more, awesome. If that leads in another direction, and I don't know, business or whatever comes out of it, fine. But at the start and the end of the day, I want to be a difference maker.
Yeah.
I want that love to be something that transforms. And so that's doing something that's different, and that's putting that difference out there and making it real.
Absolutely. Making it real, realizing it, as it were. Yeah. Oh, I think that's an admirable goal. And I've actually been catching a few of your live streams, and please continue. In fact, I may even be inspired to do something similar, because
awesome.
I've been digging pretty deep into these kinds of concepts and conversations with as many people as will have them with me. Right. And I also do feel as though it's a message that needs to be spread. The power that we have as individuals to really co-create, to really shape the reality of the planet by simply becoming in alignment with what our true values and core ideas are, and then exhaling that into the world around us.
And I love your methodology. I love the way that you frame that, the breathing in and breathing out. There's a Tai Chi to that that's very, very good. I like it.
Yeah, and I think, to bring this back around, I mean, if you can imagine this coming into alignment, this self-awareness, this focus, and then the putting that out into the world around you in terms of, presenting yourself to your audience, to your quote unquote market. Can you imagine the type of relationships, the difference in the types of relationships, the types of people that are going to be attracted into your world and the quality of them, as opposed to something, that's not in alignment, something that is a bit more chaotic, a bit more, this is where we go back to the whole, do you make up a branded image, or do you just find out what is the purest thing within yourself and then put that out into the world and attract that into your reality, right? The quality of the audience most likely will be much higher, in my opinion. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I agree. And this kind of piggybacks a little bit on what you're talking about. It kind of popped in my head when we were mentioning the aspect of bringing ourselves into a place in the inhale exhale and the control deal too. I've learned that personal responsibility is really one of the biggest keys to being successful. And part of that whole mantra process of going through things is it's kind of a subliminal way of telling yourself, I am responsible for me. I am taking the blame off of other people and in the way that they treat me, and the way that I am interpreted, and I'm not. And if I'm not getting something that I want, I'm going to take responsibility for my actions in that process, and I'm going to do what I need to do to change that. And knowing though that I can only take responsibility for my part.
Yes.
And I can, if there's something else that's wrong with the connection, I will take as much responsibility for my part, but I have to be willing to leave the other person to take responsibility for theirs. And that also is an incredible act of love, and it takes a whole lot of strength.
Yes.
And poise. But the idea of personal responsibility means that I can't blame you for not responding to me the way that I want you to. I can't blame you for not giving me the thing that I want. I can't blame you for whatever the case may be. I'm responsible for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm responsible, this is what I'm planning inside of me because this is what I want to produce. I'm responsible for the things that I produce in my life.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for my words, my actions, and my attitudes. And when those things are off, I have to take responsibility for those things. And if I hurt somebody, I've got to say, dude, I screwed up. I'm sorry. What can I do to help us move forward with this?
Totally. Yeah.
But that's on me. And getting into a business standpoint, from a business perspective, and business people and business leaders, if you're in a leadership position, the products that your company makes, and the interactions that you have with your customer base, the interactions that your team has with each other, that is in some ways a reflection of the way that you have led, and the actions, attitudes, and behaviors of the way that you have presented yourself and what you've communicated to these people that are valuable.
Totally.
And you have to take responsibility for that. They might not necessarily do the things you want. They might not interpret things the way that you want them to interpret, but it is on you, and it is behoven to you to make sure that you are in development with yourself, and you are putting your best foot forward, and you are communicating the things that you want them to receive.
Yeah.
And when that gets in harmony, then you have really strong, powerful teams that go out and do amazing things and bring others into them.
Yeah, it becomes a bit cyclical. There's a cumulative effect to it, and it's interesting. This is sort of the most philosophical / spiritual approach to music marketing conversation that I've had yet on the show, which I love,
awesome.
By the way.
Awesome.
Yeah, in fact, I hope to shift a little more in that direction, because I do believe there's great power in it, and that a lot of people they miss, that they don't consider. And a lot of it has to do with what you just described, the not taking responsibility, which, by the way, is easy to do when things are going good, when things are going well. It's much easier to take responsibility, right? And when things are not going so well, to understand that that's equally that is equally my creation, as everything is in my world for the most part, right? And what I mean by that is that, yes, okay, if somebody just walks up to me on the street and smacks me in the face, that's not necessarily something that I had control over, or so there are external events that are going to constantly be happening, but what it does to me internally, I have complete control over. And what it does to me internally is going to be what I exhale back out into the world again, which is going to be cyclical and cumulative. It's why misery loves company. You know the phrase. Somebody who's constantly miserable and sad, all they see when they look around their world is misery and sadness, and more reasons to be more miserable and sad, and probably friends to be miserable and sad with, and that their whole reality becomes what is going on inside. And I believe that that's something that, once realized, can be a real powerful tool in life in general, including our business endeavors, our creative endeavors, our relationship building endeavors. All of that, in my opinion, is wrapped up in this same concept. And hopefully more people will start talking about it and expressing, like you have today, some methods and techniques to sort of use this concept, this power that we all have, every single one of us as human beings. I really like your morning power routine. Is that where it ends, by the way, or do you have more to your morning ritual?
The morning ritual also goes into, like, I decide, okay, what is it that I'm going to do today?
Right.
And our mutual friend Steve Pofferman has been instrumental in my life in a variety of ways, but one of the ways that he has is through his leadership of talking, let's focus on one thing.
Right.
And instead of setting 10 really big goals we want to do today, let's focus on one thing. What one thing can I do today to take one big step forward? And that's been really big for me, because I've got my hand in a couple of different fires, and it's important for me to make sure that I am not chasing rabbits in all these other different places. I can move my different fires forward.
Certainly.
In something in particular. So, but before I end the walk, I determine, what is that big thing going to be today? What is my primary focus going to be? When I knock that out, I can move on to step 2. But I'm going to make sure that step 1 is necessarily done.
Right. Yeah, that's something I could do with a bit more of in my life. I find, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, are a little bit ADD, chasing the shiny objects all over the place. Oh, this idea, that idea. And before you know it, you have 150 things that are 25% done and nothing finished. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of that myself. I could use a little extra focus in the morning. So maybe I'll add a little bit of what you do to my morning power routine, which, by the way, always starts with making my bed. And that sort of sets me up. It's like, okay, task number 1 is done. Psychologically, I feel as though I've already been a little bit productive. Job number 1 for the day is complete. My bed is made. Then I move on from there. But listen, man, like I said earlier, I want to be respectful of your time. So we'll wrap it up. But before we go, where is the best place people can go if they want to learn more about you, if they want to subscribe to the podcast, shoot you a message? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
I'll give 2 things here. Best way to see the stuff that I'm doing and tap into the growth farming stuff is to go to my website, which is just dgrantsmith.com. You can also subscribe to the podcast there. Being a radio person and being somebody that's very big on teaching other people how to build relationships, I wrote a book and developed a course, like you, on how to go about building relationships with radio people and with music curators. And you can get more information about that. It's on I think it's on the books link on my website.
I'm looking at the site right now. It says My Books.
Yeah, so Books is the DIY Musician's Radio Handbook, and I've got it. That's basically the course manual, like a college course manual for the indie radio promotion course, which is an in-depth. I take you through the process that I took myself on to get my show syndicated across the country. I show you the way that I formulated my messaging, the way that I targeted the people that I wanted to get in front of, where I got those lists from, what I did from a research standpoint, how I managed my time while I was working 50 plus hours a week and still managed to get this stuff done on the side without keeping myself up all night. I talk about follow-up. I talk about all the different steps that come to, because here's the thing, this is a little more bonus points, I guess, in a sense. Radio promotion is a relationship building thing. It's not a marketing tactic. If you're only contacting people because you've got this new release and you want to get in front of as many people as you possibly can, and this is your marketing tactic, that's going to be a less fulfilling experience for you than the experience of, how can I grow my contact list of specific people and build relationships with them over time, so that every time I release a new song, they're probably already listening to me anyways. And we have an ongoing dialogue. I can let them know about this thing, and I don't have to pitch anything to them anymore. I just need to keep them in the loop.
Yeah,
That
I
is
love it.
a much more beneficial way to cultivate a relationship, especially with somebody that has influence over an audience that you want to get in front of. And that's what I show people how to do in my course. That's what I show people how to do in my coaching. And that's what I show people how to do in my book. So the website, dgrantsmith.com, I've got all that stuff there. And then if you want to email me and ask me any questions about any of the things I've talked about here, or you want to have a conversation about any of this stuff and make it more real for your work, my email address is dgrant@dgrantsmith.com.
Perfect. I love it. Thanks, man, for taking the time. I truly appreciate it. I really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And it's like you said earlier before we hit record, it's nice to sort of put a face to the name. And I look forward to carrying on the conversation, in the land of Facebook and wherever else we happen to interact. So like I said, I appreciate it. And dgrantsmith.com for those people who want to check out more about what you do. I'll put a link in the description in the show notes so that people can get a little easier access to that. And like I said, hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Well, you've got my Skype and you've got my Facebook. So from a personal standpoint, so man, Dezz, you can reach out to me anytime you want to. I love you, man. I appreciate everything you're doing. I thank you so much for the opportunity to get in front of you and be able to just talk about this stuff openly with like-minded people. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'm looking forward to hearing the feedback from this episode. All right, brother. We'll talk soon.
All right, dude. Thank you.